Hey, so this is the Drunkalogs, a podcast about addiction and recovery in which each guest shares their version of how it was, what happened, and how it is now, and then endures a half-hour Q&A at the hands of your host, Nick Morton. My next guest hails from Little Rock, Arkansas, where she first learned to party in her early teens. And while life took her to boarding school in New England and on the road with her husband's band, it was only when she returned to Arkansas, had children, and found herself on a kind of spiritual quest that she ultimately made her way to sobriety. Won't you please welcome Katherine Wyrick. I think it's good advice. Good. Live more like a dog. Very just good. Like wear my kibbles and bits. Like I just want a warm spot in the sun. Like I am not worried. Dogs don't tend to worry about their career. Okay, Katherine Wyrick coming to us from Little Rock, Arkansas, which is, very exotic for this podcast. So tell us, how was it? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Little Rock, and then I left when I was about 15 and went to school in Connecticut. Where
let me ask you before we go from 0 to 15. Was there a drinking history in Little Rock before you left?
Yes, there was.
Interesting.
There was. There was just very little to do and sort of a lot of idle time. And so there was a lot of Bacardi and whiskey and schnapps, I remember, for a brief period.
And what was
very early.
What was kind of like the first time that you were like, oh yeah, this is booze?
I remember. I remember. I had spent the night with a friend, and we decided we were going to sneak out and meet our friend Daniel, who was a very corrupting influence.
And how old were you at this point?
13.
Right. Wow.
I was always looking for the experience, like I remember in the 6th grade for a science fair project, I got my mother I was going to do a thing about plants and how the soil, it's one of those just generic projects where you can either put coffee grounds in the soil or tobacco in the soil to see how the plant grows. And I can remember being in 6th grade standing at the checkout line and convincing my mother I needed a pack of Camel unfilters and watching them buy and thinking, I'm going to smoke them.
Right.
I'm going to smoke them right when I get home. So, always looking for that kind of experience. I did.
Had you smoked cigarettes at that point before?
No, but I figured that was just the way to get them. That's the way to get them.
Right.
Yeah.
And how was that?
It was very dizzying. Experience because they didn't have the filter. But I was just always, from the beginning, seeking to sort of alter, altered state. But I can remember being 13.
At 12 years old, when you're trying to smoke a cigarette, you don't really know that that's going to alter your state, do you? Because people are smoking it around you.
I don't, but I know it's going to look good, Nick.
So it's interesting, though, that it is kind of like that. Like, I'm always sort of curious about like where that impulse begins, and because I think for some people it really begins, as I hear people say, like, oh, my first addiction was fantasy books because I just wanted to escape from my reality. But like your impulse to smoke cigarettes is born more of curiosity, I think. Like what is it like to be an adult? Like or rebellion, this idea that like this is something I'm not allowed to do, and yet the grown-ups are allowed to do it.
Yes.
And I'm going to fucking trick my parents into getting me this thing because I should be allowed to do it, right?
That's it. Well, I think it's born of both rebellion, and then it's bound up with this idea of, something glamorous and adult,
Sure.
So both of those things, all of those things.
Yeah.
And I thought my mother wasn't a smoker. My parents weren't smokers, but they just seemed so sort of bohemian and glamorous, and it was all kind of like a piece, with that.
Yeah. Right.
They had these parties, and you know how it was.
People were smoking, yeah.
And people were smoking, and but I remember that, and I didn't necessarily like it, but I wouldn't even that wasn't really even the first time. The first time was drinking, and that was when I was 13. And we snuck out, and the next thing I remember is being passed out or waking up from being passed out under a magnolia tree with two of my friends and just looking up at the leaves.
Where'd you guys get the booze? Just from your parents or someone's parents?
Well, we did have that one friend who could always get whatever.
Right.
And who we could also blame everything on.
That's important too.
It was like the scapegoat for everything for years.
And so what'd you guys do? You like snuck out onto the golf course or something?
Yeah.
Right.
No, just down the street, and I can just under the tree, and I can just remember passing it around, drinking it straight, and the burn.
Right, sure.
And then the warmth, and then the feeling sort of out of your body. So then I would never be able to have pointed it back to that until, I got into recovery. But now I can see that was sort of the beginning of like just wanting to check out and not be in my head or my body or, so.
And so do you drink again from there? Like, like you have this this adventure at 13 with these couple friends, and did you guys get in any trouble for it or get caught or anything?
That time we didn't. So then it was sort of, just off to the races. And then we were also smoking pot. And I can remember, this makes me a little bit sad, but I can remember my one friend who had kind of developed earlier, so she looked older. We were just 13, but she looked like she was probably 16.
Right.
She had an older guy coming over named Craig that we were going to smoke some pot. We're going to smoke some pot. Which the kids don't call it pot today, Nick. They just call it weed.
Right.
I don't know if you know that.
I get confused. Like, which is the cool thing? Is it cool to say pot? I think pot sounds cooler to me. Weed sounds kind of.
Yeah.
Weed is like what that like sketchy older guy with the half mustache was trying to give you as like a small bag of stems and shake when you were
shake. We always
14.
We call this isn't PC, and I hesitate to say it, but we used to call that Mexican brick bud, but I don't think that's very nice. But so and he was going to come over, so I had on my candies. I don't know if you remember what candies are, but they made me look a little taller, and I thought a little bit older.
Right.
They're high heel shoes for small children. And then a sweatshirt that I stuffed my bra, and I had on a Clemson. That's a school in South Carolina. I had a Clemson sweatshirt, stuffed bra, candies, and I was ready to smoke some pot.
You are so sophisticated.
I know. Before my
You must have thought you were at least 14.
Oh, at least, right? Little love's baby soft behind the ears. But so I was just always like really curious. Really just kind of from the get-go, Well, a lot of it was just having the time. Yeah.
And then so how does it sort of progress from there? Like you have a couple misadventures and then.
Yeah, just some misadventures. And I can remember smoking cloves and like that. My mom was out of town and I was just with my dad. I'm an only child. I was the only one in the house. And I had a friend over and we made screwdrivers. I was probably 14 then, and smoking cloves. And we passed out on the floor of the kitchen. We were also trying to smoke like basil and oregano and stuff. So that kind of tells you where we were.
Right.
And then my dad found us. And then the next day, I remember I was working on a paper on Francis Marion, the swamp fox. You know who that is?
No.
It's not important. It's neither here nor there. But I was working on that paper, and my dad came into my room, and that's when he told me about alcoholism in our family, and that my grandfather was an alcoholic, and that really could have kind of died from it and died young. And so that I remember that moment. Not it didn't stop me from doing things, but I remember it. Oh, this is funny though. It sounds a little hokey, but my first sentence, my grandmother lived in a house out from town. There were woods behind the house. And my parents said, "Oh, Catherine, look at the wild turkeys." And then I couldn't see wild turkeys. And I said, "Wild turkeys all gone, damn it." And I think that's weirdly prescient. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it
Was that
sounds
something
corny
that
when I say it.
No, it's hilarious. Would your parents like quote that back at the end of every party? Wild turkey's all gone, damn it.
No, no, it didn't even occur to me until I kind of, you know how in the program you write your story. I don't know if you guys
Sure.
do.
No, I
You
never
write your
did that.
story. So I actually, yeah, I returned to that memory, and I thought, yeah, that's vaguely
That's
prescient.
amazing.
That because I
And so
did
do you end out like getting in trouble in sort of your early like
Yes. Not I mean, not like in trouble with the police or anything like that, but just I ran with a group of kids who would drink before school, who in middle school were, you know, smoking before they went to school. I mean, just the whole kind of culture. I can remember being in a class, in French class in like 7th grade, and a guy taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around and he puts a tab of acid on his tongue. Like, it was just crazy.
wow.
It was just crazy. I mean, there was a guy on the playground, we called him Mr. Huff, only middle schooler with a mustache, and he would sell joints.
Right.
So, you know, it was, I mean, it was.
And would you like drink and smoke before school or no?
Not in middle school,
right?
But some in high school.
Right.
But I could never really. I was always a pretty good student, you know, and all that. I just held it together.
Right.
But that's okay. Just I managed to sort of hold it together. But no, but I mean, there was just sort of just a series of wild parties, that kind of thing. Nothing like traumatic happened. But I just knew I was kind of, the trajectory was not good. And so I sent myself away basically to boarding school thinking that would help.
Right.
Which, as we know, it doesn't.
Yeah,
but,
well, certainly in my experience, boarding school was just a license to drink a hole in my stomach. But I don't think everyone has that experience. No, so what was it like there? What was it? What was boarding school like for you?
Well, I just felt, I mean, I did feel like such a fish out of water, but also I had all of this partying experience. So it was sort of old hat to me. So I sort of just felt, so very seasoned and kind of sophisticated, like.
Right. So you're there as a 10th grader?
I was there at 10th through 12th. And again, managed to like kind of thrive, but also do a lot of partying as well. But I can just remember, and I thought everyone did this, and it turns out everyone doesn't. But like riding into New York on the train and drinking vodka out of the little canonical paper cups.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you get from the bathroom, like standing in between and smoking a joint and drinking that, and like that was just. Then I'd bring weed back to school, and I'd smoke it in my room through a bounce sheet. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, there is this thing in my mind at that time where I did all that stuff, and I did it relentlessly, and I did it like, I mean, I did it with a lot of joy and a lot of purpose and a lot of sense of that, like, on some level, like, what else was there? And that I still am a little bit, I still don't know the answer to that because that time of my life is behind me, but I sort of wonder, like, what is, I mean, it's honestly hard for me to imagine, like, what is high school like if you're not hell-bent on rebellion and partying and like, I mean, it's like that was so much of like my purpose. Like you get to the airport and you figure out how to get fucked up. It's like, okay, I'm out of my parents' orbit now. I'm going to like I have a half an hour here where nobody knows where I am. So I'm going to go into Cambridge and I'm going to get someone to buy me 18 handles of vodka that I can bring back to campus with me. And like,
I'm excited just thinking about it.
And I like, what I wonder, like, how might I have turned out if I had been like taking all of that energy and putting it into like astronomy or theater or, learning how to play the flute. Like, could I have, I wonder if I could have found the same satisfaction in it, that same sense of like adventure, because there were people who accomplished shit when I was in boarding school. You know,
Yeah,
they went
but
off to DC and performed theater.
right.
You know, they did all these interesting things, and I'm sure that was a big rush. But to me, I was like, those people are dorks.
Oh, me too. I didn't want to associate with those people. You know, to me, there was only the one way. I just can't
Yeah, and
imagine
I
having to
think
make those
those
choices then.
people looked at people like us and were like, why are they such fucking idiots? Like,
Idiots. Oh, idiots. Total idiots.
anyway.
No, I don't know why. It just was such a blind spot. I mean, I just couldn't. It was like there was just the one path ahead, you know.
And did you get in trouble when
but
you were there at boarding school?
No. And the school I went to was a one chance and you're out. So if you got caught doing anything, you were immediately expelled. I mean, not suspended, you were expelled.
Jeez.
And so I knew it was pretty dangerous, and I really did not want to go back to Little Rock. And so I was very, very careful about not
How
getting
exciting too.
caught. And it was exciting, but I'm trying. Oh, but oddly enough, and I think I mentioned this to you, I had a teacher there who one time took me off campus. We went into Hartford, and he took me to what was my first AA meeting. I don't know if he knew, he must have seen something in me, but that was back when people smoked in there, and I can remember the smoky room and the styrofoam cups and the chatter and just feeling like, what the fuck? Why am I here? This is, you know, I cannot imagine why he's brought me to this place.
And he
didn't, just that one time.
He didn't preface it to be like, was he like, I'm going to take you someplace that might interest you, or you don't remember?
No, and I've since wondered about getting in touch with him and asking why he, you know, he was my drama teacher.
Just, I mean, to say like, hey, I'm sober now. I've been sober for how long have you been sober?
This month it was 13 years, but January.
I mean, I remember being when I was in boarding school and I was drinking. I mean, I was drinking a liter of vodka a day because I thought I was, you know, I thought I was Jack Kerouac. Really. Yeah, I thought like that was just. I thought I was some like rebel poet. I mean, I didn't write any poetry, but I know. But I drank like a rebel poet, and I remember I was taking an independent study project. So it was just me and one other kid. And I was it was about psychiatry. And so I was in the school counselor's office. He was our teacher. And I was so hungover, I was shaking and, trying to keep it together. I'm sure I smelled terribly. And class ended. And the teacher was like, to my friend, it was like, Jason, you can leave. I need to talk to Nick for a minute. And he was like, my friend laughed and he's like, you're so hungover, Nick, you're shaking. Like that is the delirium tremens. Like you are you're in crisis. But like, I don't remember being offered, like, it was nice to be seen. Like I was like, there was something really, I appreciated that someone could see that I was in some like a level of pain that I just didn't really understand. Like I still don't totally understand it. Like I was at my own child's school the other day and they were like, if your child is using and abusing drugs, it's a sign of mental illness. And I was like, oh wow, I guess I was mentally ill, you know, like there was something I was not processing properly. And it was nice to have someone recognize that, but I don't remember him offering me any kind of like solution in that. But anyway.
No, I know it was different. It was different then. I mean, you couldn't take, I'm getting smacked in the forehead with the dog. But, what was I going to say? Oh, just that it probably wouldn't even be okay now for a teacher to take a student off campus and just go to a meeting like that.
No, I mean, just even to spend time alone with a student is, I think, basically illegal. Like, not illegal, but the protocols, like you'll get fired for spending time.
Right. But I'm so grateful he did, because it kind of, whether I knew it or not at the time, it sort of gave me this template, you know, and so when I first went to a meeting, my first meeting as an adult when I was 30, I guess. No, 35. There was something a little familiar about it.
Right.
You know?
It didn't seem like you were on Mars.
Yeah, it didn't seem like I was on Mars.
So, so you successfully graduated from boarding school without getting thrown out? That's
I
amazing.
did graduate with honors, graduated, did not get thrown out. And I don't know, I just, all along, I kept thinking, like, you knew the people who were alcoholics. Like,
Right.
I don't know if people were pointing at you thinking, oh, yeah, he's an alcoholic. But I wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't that out of control at that point. I mean, for me, I did spend my 20s drinking, smoking pot. My husband was in a band. We spent a lot of time at bars. But sadly, it really wasn't until I had children that the drinking really, I crossed some sort of line, and I couldn't control it anymore. And so I was in my late 20s. I can see how it was always kind of there, germinating. I mean, now that I look back, but I really did not just kind of kick into high gear until then.
Let me just quickly, where'd you go to college?
I went to college at Davidson College in North Carolina.
And was that like a continuation of your, like, did it feel like you'd kind of been there, done that by the time you got there? And like, or
it kind of did. Again, I was having that feeling like you were saying, like, if I had put the time and energy, into my studies or whatever, I could just to think what I could have done.
What'd you study there?
I'm English and French.
Right.
But I just thought I thought I was cool because I had my own bong, an old school one, an old graphics. I was always carrying.
Right.
I could drink. I like to drink whiskey. I like to have a good time. I kind of like took pride in that. It was like part of, my identity, I felt like at the time. As foolish as it sounds now. So kind of the typical college experience in ways. It's just that I think I was all along heading to a different place, and always doing just that little bit more.
Right. Yeah.
But not blacking out. There were blackout drunks who I knew in college.
Wasn't you.
Like we all knew, like, that guy over there.
He's about to be. He's about to get messy, right?
Yeah, but I wasn't. It wasn't like that.
And so then you guys are living in Little Rock, and you start having kids, and that's when shit kind of gets weird.
That's when shit gets weird. We were in Nashville for a number of years, and again, just kind of in our 20s. Again, I would have been more successful at my job. I think if I wasn't hungover a lot, I was hungover a lot.
What were you doing for work?
Not all the time. I was editing a book review that I loved, still to this day, best job I ever had. So I just, but yeah, holding it together. We had kids kind of before anyone else did, and got married and early, and so it wasn't really until. Yeah, my kids were little.
How old were
they? Helen was my daughter, who's 18 now, was 5. And I this is such a fucked up thought, but I'll share it because it's part of alcoholism, is that I can remember thinking, we were drinking a lot and partying a lot when they were little. And I remember thinking, I'm going to quit before she's 5 or when she turns 5, because that's like my first memory is when I was 5. So she won't remember me like this. It's just a totally screwed up thought. It's really screwed up, and, thankfully I happened to quit when she was 5, but
isn't that funny how that works? It's like,
yeah.
I always maybe thought I would quit when I was 40, and then I did.
Yeah.
Weirdly, that's just a coincidence.
And then I quit, but I said, but if we go to Italy, I will drink then. There were all that thinking.
All these caveats.
These caveats.
And what was sort of the sequence of events that like got you to a point, and how did you finally like get into that first recovery meeting?
I did have friends who were in recovery, so I sort of, had them as touch points, but it just kind of started getting, it just wasn't fun anymore. And I couldn't control the drinking anymore. And there were a couple of nights when, we just went for a family dinner with some friends from our kids' elementary school with the kids. And I don't even remember. I remember going into that night thinking, I don't I don't want to drink too much. And then just making an embarrassing scene, just talking too much, making a scene, I don't remember a thing. That was one of the times I did black out, because there were a few times I blacked out, when the drinking got bad, like in my early 30s. And that's how I knew something was really not right.
And were there any like consequences for those like things, or was it just like, I wake up in the morning and I feel embarrassed and I'm not sure exactly what I did, and I'm a fucking parent, like that's not cool.
All of that, and there weren't really consequences yet. I do want to say that I don't know how much you guys get into talking about spirituality stuff, but I was all this while really on a spiritual path, doing all this dream work, going to these workshops, doing kind of digging deep. And I kept, I was in a dream group and I kept asking for dreams. Like, I want to go deeper spiritually, but I don't know what that looks like. And then I would get all these dreams about, you need to get sober. You need to stop drinking. And I would say, no, I'm not going to do that, but I will. Oh yeah, but I will go to this workshop on the Enneagram. I will do that.
What's the Enneagram?
I'm not going to quit drinking, but the dreams just kept coming.
What's the Enneagram?
Like ancient Sufi way. It's like an ancient Sufi way of determining personality type. You got to look into it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, look, I live in Los Angeles. We're all in like an endless pursuit of spiritual meaning, and some of it's hokey, but it's weird how anyone, I think, on a real quest inevitably finds some truth, even if the path is hokey.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've found truth in a lot of different places, and you just take what you want and kind of leave the rest, like anything. But it's just the dreams were really persistent, and they just kept saying, you have to stop, and I knew it was coming from a higher source. I knew I needed to listen to it, or, things were going to just keep going as they were, or worse. And meanwhile, my family, no one was really worried about me. No one knew I was struggling with this. But my aunt said, I told her I was going to quit drinking, and she said, well, why can't you just smoke pot? Or, why? I mean, the fact was, too, I was so hungover a lot of the time. I wasn't present with my children.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't available to them in the way I wanted to be. I was irritable. I mean, it's all the things.
Yeah.
So it just was, but there were a couple, like I said, I ended up blacking out a few times. I drove during one of those times. Very upsetting.
Yeah.
And then kind of one of the last nights, I was dressed as Loretta Lynn, which is my go-to for Halloween, because I have the perfect outfit. And I was Loretta Lynn for a number of years.
Right.
Yeah, the wig was looking a little worn and disheveled with each passing year. But I could remember, being at a party. I mean, part of it is funny now in retrospect, but, totally in character. But yet the wig sort of slipped half back on my head. I'm flirting with someone else's husband. Things are getting increasingly hazy. Makeup is running. It's not a pretty picture.
Right.
And things just kept heading in that direction. So I guess, but the one consequence, my husband, who just is the peacemaker and all this, just wants to get along, doesn't want to rock the boat, finally said to me, like, something has to change. Something's got to give. This isn't going to work. It's not sustainable. And that scared me enough. Plus that with the dreams, and then also had some energy work done. It's called holographic repatterning.
Mm-hmm.
Since you're from LA, I'm being honest about this.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And she told me, before I even told her I thought I had a drinking problem, that it goes back in my family for 7 generations.
Sure.
And so I knew I was breaking some cycle. Like I had to do it.
What happens in holographic repatterning?
Well, apparently it can really change your DNA. I mean, she did several things with like EMDR. She did stuff with colors and stuff. It's supposed to be
EMDR is when they you follow a light sort of around that you look at. Is that right?
When you do the eye eye tracking.
Right.
So I worked with this woman for a number of months, and again, it was just the messages were coming and the synchronicities were coming from all over the place. And thankfully I could listen long enough to kind of wake up to what was going on.
And then what happened? Did you go, was it like a one day you're like, I'm going to go to a meeting, or one day I'm like, I'm just going to stop?
No, I said, I'm going to, and I spent months talking about this, talking with people, you know what I mean?
Right.
Not taking any action, just talking around it
right.
and about it.
Sure.
And
would you do like dry periods where you're like, I'm not going to drink for a month?
Well, that's what I was going to say. My dad had a brain aneurysm, and I was just like, I am done with this. So I quit for 6 months on my own at some point. And then I had a glass, like I can have a glass of champagne in January on New Year's. And then once again, off to the races.
Right.
And I can just remember having, again, in my talking to people who were in the program, I wasn't receptive to some, but some, said the right thing at the right time, I guess.
Sure.
Someone just said, well, you don't have to do this. I mean, you don't have to keep doing it, because it was just doing the same thing over and over and over. And I thought, that's revelatory. Really? I don't have to keep vomiting in the morning for being hungover and not being able to take care of my children?
Yeah, it's hard to get to that crazy place, because it's like
self-sabotaging. And anyway, it was
right where it feels like that's the prize.
Yeah.
Here was the I don't have to give myself this treat, this gift, and like meanwhile, because it's like you can't see it as this. It takes so long to get to a point where you can see it as like, but no, this is the thing I want to do. Like you're like, oh wait, no, this is actually the last thing I want to do. I want to do anything
instead of this. And for a while, what was hard for me is, for a while I had so much fun drinking. I mean, we had these wild dinner parties, and I felt like I could throw a dinner party, and and it was fun. But the dinner parties sort of started to kind of devolve into just. You know how it gets. I mean,
it's not fun anymore.
It's not fun. It was like it became like a Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf thing rather than
right.
Everybody's having a great time. And so it just got bleaker and bleaker, and I kept trying to turn it around and make it fun again.
Right.
Until I realized it could not ever be fun again.
Yeah, people would say, why are you stopping drinking? And I was finally like, I didn't say this to everybody, but I would sometimes say, like, I think I've explored all there is to explore in drinking. Like, there is nothing unknown to me anymore about my drinking life. And I'm going to be here for probably a lot longer. Like, I should start exploring some other worlds,
That's right. Some others, exactly. I mean, when I would think about the time and the energy I would devote to what I was going to drink and when I was going to drink it, and see, I wasn't a daily drinker. Right. I didn't drink in playgroup. We did start to have martinis,
and
of course, I always had more than two. At 4 p.m.
Right.
But even that seems sort of charming and just. Fun.
Right. Sophisticated parenting.
I don't know. It just all went south really so quickly in like a matter of like 5 years. And I loved being a mother. And I mean, I had these amazing pregnancies where I wasn't tempted to drink at all, and had natural childbirth and home birth. And, I was so wrapped up in all that. And yet I always have had bad anxiety, and it was a way to cope with that. And I can see how it all kind of, this confluence of things.
So someone says to you, you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And then what happens?
Well, so then I call another friend and who I know is in the program and ask her to take me to a meeting.
Right.
And it's a dark and stormy night, and I don't want to go, but I go.
Right.
And I fucking hate it.
Right.
And hate every sorry ass in there.
Wow.
And then I actually do hate it for a while. I'm not the one who just walked in and just embraced it, and I'm not. But when I finally kind of did, I did,
What keeps you coming back? Just like at that point?
I mean, I guess just the fear, for a long time, just the fear of going back to that place, never wanting to return to being sprawled on the bathroom floor and unable to function, just the foxhole prayers kind of thing.
Sure.
But but it's evolved over time. It's not so much the fear, it's what everybody says about a way to live life and, deepen your spiritual practice and your connection and all that. But I wasn't, I just was very resistant. And I think a lot of people are resistant. And I was and continue to be kind of rebellious still to this day, kind of trying to buck some of the tenets or the steps or whatever. I tend to still do that.
And
that's just kind of part of it.
Was there a moment or some sort of see the light kind of thing where you're like, you know what, this is actually the thing? What was that like?
Yeah. There wasn't so, it was more like, it wasn't like lightning bolt, burning bush kind of thing. Like, this is the thing. It was more like a sort of heat lightning kind of thing, like gradual over time. Warming to it and making connections. I had a wonderful sponsor who I got the first week I was there, who I just immediately connected with, and we worked together for many years. And the hardest things in life I've experienced have been in sobriety, and I couldn't have done that without the program. But I've been disenchanted with it, and kind of, I've never gone out, but I've had times where I'm not attending meetings as much as I need to, for sure, and I have to watch that,
And like, how has sobriety sort of dovetailed with like the thing you were going through before you got sober, which is just like trying to find some sort of spiritual meaning in your life?
Well, I feel like for so long, I just put it kind of all into the steps and into the program, and that was sufficient. And it's still essential. It's still crucial. But I'm kind of looking to still exploring, other paths and other ways while having that as a foundation. Anything I read or get interested in, it all ends up sort of coming back to the 12 steps anyway,
Sure. I feel like there's like so much like useful wisdom in that program of just like, for me, like one of the big reliefs was this sort of recognition that there was a lot I couldn't control, and that was okay. That's like huge. That no one was expecting me to control this stuff. Like, somehow I still feel that like that everyone expects me to make it okay. And, and like, that's beyond my capacity.
They do.
And sort of letting that go, like it's being like, it's okay if it doesn't work out, I just got a lot of relief in that. And then,
and that's surrender. That's a huge part of surrender.
And, but I struggled to then get to that next place where, I believe that there is a benevolent higher power that's actually going to care for me. I believe that like, life will take its course and it will be interesting and challenging and ultimately more fulfilling for its challenges. But I don't always believe that there's anything guiding me towards some more profound path. I definitely feel like I'm stumbling along in the dark, and and that that's all anyone expects of me, and that's okay. But do you have a conception of a higher power that's different?
Oh, I definitely do, and I attribute my relationship to that higher power, to getting in the program to begin with. I really, as far as the dream stuff goes, in the end of my drinking days, I had gone to my cousin's wedding in Guatemala. This was the month before I quit. And I had and it got wasted. I mean, shit-faced, and missed out on so much amazing stuff.
Right.
What was that? I mean, they had the people from that Cuban man called, they had them play, and they were so incredible.
The social club?
Buena Vista
What?
Social Club play.
Oh my
yes.
God.
And
wow.
I somehow missed a huge part of that.
Right.
From being drunk. But I can remember it was New Year's Eve, and standing on the rooftop and watching the fireworks and thinking, this is not fucking working anymore.
Right.
And somehow, though, a dream managed to get through, and I had this really profound dream, which I won't go into, but it involved like this Black Panther, and it was a very stirring symbol and a very, deep, rich kind of archetype. And that dream I attribute with helping me to get sober.
Interesting.
So I was like ushered into the program. So for me, I had roadblocks for sure, but they weren't about God or the divine or whatever you want to call it. They weren't about the spiritual path, because I was on that. I mean, as my mom said, well, you're looking in, it's been said before, but she said, well, they're called spirits for a reason, and it's true.
What is the reason?
Well, that you're looking for something greater in a bottle of spirits.
Right. Oh, spirits. Right. Booze. Yes. Oh, definitely.
Booze. Yeah,
oh, definitely.
Booze.
Yes. I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, because certainly for me a long time, like I felt like, I've heard people say this in meetings, but that like booze made them present. It made them stop thinking about the past and stop thinking about the future, and just able to enjoy being here and now. And like, to me, that's another conception of God or
of course.
Spirituality, like, is when I'm just completely present. Sometimes the now feels infinite, and I am at peace. And like, that's what I would get definitely from spirits.
Yes. No, me too. No, and the divine can be found in the now, and I feel like my search was always kind of chasing that ultimately,
Yeah.
And
I'm still chasing.
Connection.
I'm still very much.
And I still am.
I don't know if I've talked about this on here, but I had one mushroom trip where I had this, I had this moment high on, psychedelic mushrooms that now I was fine now. And I was, because it can be pretty intense, and I was fine and I was fine and I was fine.
God.
And like moment to moment, I was still fine. And so I would always be fine now, and now would last into infinity. And like, I've experienced a similar revelation in sobriety. And in some ways it's even more beautiful, because you're able to sort of, while you're going through that, appreciate like the wild smell of Los Angeles orange blossoms in February, and like the way the light, glances off the courtyard and stuff like that. And you're like, wow, life is beautiful.
Yeah, you have a certain clarity. You can, when you're when you are sober, it does bring that a certain clarity that you just don't have from if you're on mushrooms or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. I mean, it's elusive. Somebody said I have an abiding faith that comes and goes. Have you heard that?
But yes, I feel that way. I feel that way. It's amazing how strong it feels when the flow of faith is moving through you, and then suddenly you just feel abandoned, and that's weird too. You're just like, wow, that like I'm just the current stopped, and now I'm just stalled out here, and like I would love some faith to come along and just kind of move me down the river a little bit.
Yeah, I get it.
And part of that's then having the faith to wait, because and
to
accept
wait.
that it will come back, and it usually does.
Totally,
so.
And it usually does. I think you can count on that. Oh, good.
Well, Katherine, this has been really interesting and cool. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and taking the time out from Tallulah and Silas.
Well, thank you. It's been delightful. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Hey, so if you've been enjoying this podcast, you can head over to my Patreon page and feel completely free to support the show with a modest contribution at www.patreon.com/thedrunkalogs. Drunkalogues cover art is designed and created by John DeManil, and the Drunkalogues theme song is composed and performed by Stephen Stout. I am Nick Morton.